Well, I don't believe I've ever said that. Or if I did, it was a long, long time ago, when I was a young man and naive, last week or something like that. I've never said that there is anything wrong with the Gurdjieff tradition. What I say is there are two teachings ascribed to Gurdjieff. There's the Gurdjieff tradition, which actually comes from Ouspensky and is the product of Ouspensky's misunderstanding, misinterpretation of what Gurdjieff told him. So it's not Gurdjieff's teaching. It is Ouspensky's teaching and is ascribed to Gurdjieff. This is the traditional teaching ascribed to Gurdjieff. Gurdjieff tradition, I call it. I've not said there's anything wrong with it. It's just not Gurdjieff's teaching. And then there is what Gurdjieff himself was teaching, completely different, as expressed by him in his own writings, Beelzebub's Tales to his grandson particularly, the first book that we have to study. But I'm not saying the Gurdjieff tradition is wrong, and there are two things I can say in this context. I think the first of these is that we have these three questions. What was Gurdjieff teaching? What was Gurdjieff teaching Ouspensky? And the question, how did Ouspensky interpret and understand what Gurdjieff told him? Or as I've said, misinterpret and misunderstand what Gurdjieff told him. And we can answer these questions because the first question, what was Gurdjieff teaching? We have Gurdjieff's own writings, Beelzebub's Tales to his grandson. Gurdjieff was teaching this transformation, the need to raise the energetic level of the whole organism up to a new level, at which point our own individual development can begin. So Gurdjieff was teaching this transformation, the stairway, a series of steps we have to ascend to raise the energetic level of the whole organism. If we go to the second question, what was Gurdjieff teaching Ouspensky, then clearly he was teaching the first step on the stairway. Just the first step. Or the beginnings, at least, of the first step. And Ouspensky has recorded this in his memoir of this time, those 3 years, when he was a pupil of Gurdjieff between 1915 and 1921. The book In Search of the Miraculous, published in 1950. So we've had it now for 75 years, for just anyone can read it. And if we look carefully at this book, we can discern this first step on the stairway. We get the beginnings, at least, of this first step on the stairway. What was Gurdjieff teaching Ouspensky? And Ouspensky records very exactly what Gurdjieff told him in this book. But of course, Ouspensky then, if we go to the third question, how did Ouspensky interpret and understand what Gurdjieff told him? We can see that Ouspensky misinterpreted and misunderstood what Gurdjieff told him. Ouspensky did not use the very exact quotes that he himself records coming from Gurdjieff. Ouspensky didn't use these quotes. He misinterpreted and misunderstood these quotes and created a completely different teaching. And so when we ask the third question, how did Ouspensky interpret and understand what Gurdjieff told him, we have the system that Ouspensky was teaching in London from 1921 to 1941. This is Ouspensky's teaching. And in fact has nothing to do with Gurdjieff. Ouspensky made it clear again and again and again in those years from 1921 to 1941 and onwards that this teaching was not Gurdjieff's teaching. He forbade, is that a word? He forbade pupils to mention Gurdjieff's name. This was not just a fit of pique on his part. This was because this is not Gurdjieff's teaching. This was Ouspensky's teaching, the system. So, if I go back to your original comment, a comment is or a challenge, right? If I go back to your original challenge, I'm not saying the Gurdjieff tradition is wrong. I'm saying it's not Gurdjieff's teaching. It is the product or the result of Gurdjieff teaching to Ouspensky, or trying to teach to Ouspensky, the first step on the stairway. So we could say that the Gurdjieff tradition is the first step on the stairway. and we can find in it, imperfectly expressed, but we can find in it the elements of the first step on the stairway. So this is something good, because it means that those in the Gurdjieff tradition, and who've been in the Gurdjieff tradition for a length of time, and many have been in this tradition, like myself in a sense, for 50 years or more now. These books were published in 1950. So this has existed since 1950. It's a long time. Those in that tradition have, in a sense, ascended the first step on the stairway. And they are there in this vacuum that is the result of this. Because there is no one teaching, no one knows the second step on the stairway. Because this is not part of the Gurdjieff tradition. So we can say, well, there is good and bad in everything. Gurdjieff says every stick has two ends. Well, of course it doesn't. Like everything Gurdjieff says, it's just not true. A stick can have three ends, it can be a fork stick. Or it can have four ends, because it could have two forks, and so on. But we can see in this the fact that those in the Gurdjieff tradition are ascending the first step on the stairway. Good. But on the other hand, we can see that those who do ascend this first step on the stairway are then left in a vacuum, because no one is teaching the second step on the stairway. So if we remember what Gurdjieff said to Ouspensky about the fourth way, ascending the stairway on the fourth way is the stairway. He says a man must ascend a step on the stairway, he must bring another man up to his level, and only then can he ascend to a new level. But he must have a teacher at the new level to help him up the second step on the stairway. But there are no teachers on the second step on the stairway, because no one knows what the second step on the stairway is. So what I'm saying to you is not that the Gurdjieff tradition is wrong. I'm saying it's not Gurdjieff's teaching. But we can discover within it the first step on the stairway as part of Gurdjieff's teaching. We then have to move on and look for the second step on the stairway. And what I'm saying is that when we look at what Gurdjieff was actually teaching in his writings, we find the second step on the stairway. It's not that difficult. So I'm pointing out that there are two completely different teachings associated with the name of Gurdjieff. There's the Gurdjieff tradition, and there is Gurdjieff's own teaching. And what I am promoting, what I am suggesting in this context, is that there is a second step on the stairway, and a third step on the stairway. And that those in the Gurdjieff tradition are ascending the first step on the stairway, good, but then they are left hanging, suspended there, because no one, first of all, no one, or virtually no one, I would say, because I am teaching this, but virtually no one is teaching the second step on the stairway. They don't know the second step on the stairway. It's not part of the Gurdjieff tradition. And the other factor is that those who try to teach the second step on the stairway can't do so, because those in the Gurdjieff tradition are saying that this is not Gurdjieff's teaching, because Gurdjieff's teaching is the Gurdjieff tradition. So it's important to point out that actually this complex situation exists, that there are these three questions. What was Gurdjieff teaching? What was Gurdjieff teaching Ouspensky? Something different. And how did Ouspensky interpret and understand what Gurdjieff taught him? These three questions give us in fact three teachings, excuse me, which I have simplified into two, saying there is a Gurdjieff tradition, now that the book In Search of the Miraculous has been published, and there is Gurdjieff's own teaching in his own writings. And the Gurdjieff tradition is, in a sense, the first step on the stairway, and that's that. So those who ascend that first step on the stairway need to be looking, searching for someone, for the teachers, on the second step on the stairway. Like a unicorn searching for a mate. It's not an easy task.